Hello everyone, welcome to the software architecture course, and today we will discuss the workflow resource patterns. So from here we'll start to have different literature reviews about interaction design patterns and of course related to activity diagrams and process models. We will start by reviewing how to assign resources to uh, the activities that are identified. For instance, you just did a homework related to driver teachers and students at a driving school company, and in that example you have 16 or 15 available teachers. The question here that I want you to think about is what happened or how to assign the evaluation to a particular professor or teacher. For instance, who is going to be assigned student A or student B, and in what order, and how this agenda or to-do list, if you want to see it like this, is structured. So in the literature review, we have something called design patterns. Design patterns are well-known solutions to well-known problems, defined problems. And in this case, for instance, try to see that if I had a program, or now that I'm in a conference, for instance, we need to find a program committee, install the conference tool, web-based solution, submit papers, review papers, and we have different actors and resources that are used to do those tasks. But then we have to identify the pattern to assign the work to that specific actor. So in this case, I just exemplifying, but I will see in detail each type of pattern. We have like direct allocation, which means just Chloe Lambin is the one that would be in charge of finding the program committee. This is not a flexible solution. It means that always Chloe Lambin would be the same. But in this case, to install a conference tool, I can use patterns such as capability based, and a capability could be, for instance, the that I don't know. Ellen Martin is the organizer, and they had the abilities to set up a web-based solution such as EasyChair or Conference Proceedings Manager and so on. So they had the capabilities to do that. And submit papers. Well, I don't know who is going to submit papers, so this is a deferred assignation of the work. So anyone could do that, and we will see afterwards who is interested in sending papers to the conference. And then, well, I have direct allocation pattern. So this means that the reviewers would be assigned directly by the but someone, and this direct allocation. It means that there is no flexibility as well, no negotiation, no instantiation, and so on. As always, we need to have a state diagram for our task so as to know what are we trying to do in this case. So for instance, this is the um, state machine of a task, can be created, could be offered, could be assigned. This is the allocated to a single resource, could be offered to a single resource or could be offered to multiple resources. Once it is assigned or is allocated, then you can start the task, you can suspend, resume the task, the task could fail, it could be completed. No, more or less what we have seen with task modeling, but this is more close to how actually is assigned the work to the different resources that you have identified in previous activities. So the patterns is to see how and who is gonna do the activities, and we have several patterns. These are all these patterns are related to literature review. So we have direct allocation, role-based allocation, deferred allocation. Well, we'll see one by one in detail. So the direct allocation is the ability to specify at the same time the identity of the resource that will execute the task. For example, the fixed Bentley task must be only undertaken by Fred. Uh, let's see if we can see the the examples. So the direct allocation is just related to I know by in advance who is going to be in charge of this activity. So this is a process model and different tasks get tape identity, for instance, or request tape load and so on to backup. So in this case, we know in advance who or which actor. Remember that we can also model the system and the entities of the system as actors. So in advance, we know that the database, for instance, backup is in charge of doing this task. So in advance, we know who is going to execute this activity. So it is assigned and this would be executed. And then we have the request step tape load activity, which is going to be executed by a web service. That's okay. So I will do the background. Okay. So I'm just explaining that I know in advance who is going to execute and then do the backup is going to be the backup system. So, okay. So then we have a role-based work assignment. In this case, I don't know in advance who is going to execute the work. I don't know the name, particular specific actor, but what I do know is the role. This is why we had the swim lines during the activities diagram modeling. So in role-based distribution, I just said that the make inventory list could be offered to a store clerk, and the task order supplies could be offered to a manager. I'm not saying, and I don't know which specific worker will execute the task. I'm just saying that I just know the role and I need to offer this. So this is the agenda. What you can see is the agenda of Sean and Alicia, and they got the offer. And well, this is at the beginning I was mentioning that how do we know which specific worker will execute the task? So in this case, perhaps Sean decided to do the task, so Alicia is not receiving anymore the offer, so it's going to be allocated to Sean, and he is going to make the list. Then the order supply would be offered to the managers. Then in this case, Tina and Grant are the two managers, so this perhaps Tina will execute the work, and so on. So as the workflow continues and you have this offering, the next time we have an item to process, perhaps would be Alicia in charge and executing. So contrasted to direct allocation, the role-based allocation is just assigning work based on a role. More specifically, we can also have role-based distribution. Well, this is the same. Sorry, a deferred distribution. In this case, we really don't have any idea who is gonna be in charge of the task. We don't know the role. We don't know the name of the worker. So we just say, well, allocation none. I have no idea But what I do know is that if I find a volunteer to do the task, that would be the one allocated to the train an employee. No, so in this case, imagine an organization that is training new employees and so on. So well, this is what we are gonna do. So let's try to see who wants to train the new employee. I don't know. I have Bill Tracy Allen as an option. Who is gonna do that? Well, perhaps Tracy said I would do that, and then she would be in charge in her agenda. So check this work list, to do list, agenda, calendar. So it's really powerful, very close to Scrum, for instance. To do, in progress, and done is somewhere else. So this is like a Scrum board for workers in a company. So this is one of the potential workflow patterns. And then we have the authorization pattern. So in this case, what you're saying is that you, to approve a promotion request, you need a manager, but the manager will authorize the work. So we have different managers available, and there is a rule that managers cannot have concurrent execution of work items. For instance, Chris and Laura cannot be considered for the task because they currently have executing work items in their list. So in this case, Chris is doing the file papers, is in progress. Laura, she's answering the query. So Amanda, she's not doing anything. So she's gonna be in charge of the work. So Amanda is available so she can complete the activity. So the work would be allocated directly to her. So I can write rules. This is the advantage of an activity diagram or a process diagram or a Petri net, where I can add more details to understand how to distribute work. Remember, what we are focusing here is it's a runtime, how my design is gonna be working. When I design a process model, well, this is the drawing. But then this is why we sometimes forget about it. Say, well, who cares? I just have the design, the process. The professor want me to do this process model activity diagram. It's useless. In real life, it is not useless. It is really powerful tool if you want to produce really useful software, because at runtime you need to know how to distribute work and well some other aspects that we will see later on during this course. So this is also another pattern, separation of concerns. So in this case, what I want to define is a rule saying that if one specific actor, for instance in this case accountant, is in charge of executing a task, he cannot be in charge of executing another task of the process for any reason. I don't, could be any reason. In this case, of course, if you are preparing a check, you cannot be the one countersign check. This, you need someone else, another accountant, who would validate. No, this is why you want to add this kind of rules. For instance, in our projects, I can imagine that particularly for the test or for the web-based solution related to a gesture recollection, if I am the one doing the experiment, I cannot do the usability test because I'm the one that is behind the experiment. So the professor or the researcher who is conducting the experiment cannot be part of the experiment. That wouldn't make any sense. So if I started a project, then I cannot be part of the users that are tests. So in this case, Fiona is gonna do the first activity. So for the next activity, she's blocked. No, I cannot select her anymore because she's in charge of this. So then I can select any of the others, and that's it. And the work is finished. Then, well, similar to the previous one, but the contrary. In this case, is once you start an activity, then you have to finish the whole process. Here it's a very small process, but to gather evidence, prepare defense, and so on. Once you select one resource, then it is in charge of doing the whole process. Okay, so let's see. Fiona is she is in charge. Then for the next task is just Fiona who would continue the whole process. So this is known as case handling. So she is the one who had to finish the next one. And if I start again and I allocate and offer this activity to our employees, then perhaps John who would accept, and that's it. For the next activity, he had to finish because he started the activity. So this is how it works. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then we have something that is called retain familiar. Perhaps I don't want to do or to keep the whole case or the whole process, but at least I want to be sure that if I do one activity, I will do another activity of the process in the future somewhere else, but it must be me who would execute the activity. Let's see the example. So in this case, take the inventory is allocated to a store clerk. Doesn't matter who is going to be offered to the three possible options that we have. Alicia, for instance. So once she started, she's the only one that can order supplies because she started the previous one. So sorry, she's the only one available, so she would do that. But then the rest of the process, I don't care who is going to continue. I'm just saying that there are two related tasks, and the person who executed the task originally must do another task in the process afterwards. So in this case, could be Alicia as well. She's available. Let's do someone else just to be sure that it doesn't matter. Okay. Then, what if I have also, another task that is allocated to someone based on their capabilities. What do we mean? Well, we have rules, specific rules. If we have an engineer available, yes, we have an engineer for the airframe examination. But let's see, who had more capabilities? I need an engineer with aeronautics degree, all of them. Then with Airbus in service accreditation, so just Sean and Alicia. Last but not least, 10 years of experience, Alicia. Okay, so the work is allocated to Alicia because she's the only with the required capabilities so she can complete the work item. Okay, so I can even add specific rules for our different roles that are available in our workflow model. Then, similar to the previous one, but in this case, it is just related to the history. In the previous example, well, we said that we need a engineer degree, we need Airbus accreditation, and also 10 years of experience. In this case, I'm just referring to experience or to history based on activities, frequency. Who had the most hard bypass work items. No? So in this case, John. So if John is available For sure, if he's a surgeon, you would prefer the one with most experience, and you will select his work as well. Well, there is another way of selecting or accrediting work, and it's related to the organizational distribution. This is it's, an organizational framework when I can see the CEO, the CIO, the CFO, technician, workers, accountant, and so on. This is how the company is structured. And if I have this organizational structure, perhaps I may refer to particular job position in such structure. In this case, the CFO is the one who is gonna do the review audit. You may say, well, this is very similar. I don't see the difference between role-based allocation, where I decided an actor. Well, in this case, it could be very close to that, but I'm just relating my allocation to the organizational structure as it is, and I want to use those names. So in this case, it's gonna be assigned to the CFO. And well, we'll see that in our case is Martin who is gonna do that work. Finally, we had the automatic execution pattern. Remember, at the beginning we had this example of direct allocation where I just know and I in advance who is going to execute the work. With automatic execution, I'm just referring that if I had a system that is in charge of executing the task, well, this system do not normally need human intervention to do the task. So automatically will be executed. There is no agenda, there is no human interaction. It's just directly the system who's going to be triggering the different activities. So I had these web services with the same example. So everything is going to be executed in advance.